Actually, there's only one.
The door was open. All right. How are you?
No.
Is that okay, Ren?
I'll be being
Under the wheel. Yeah.
yeah. We haven't reached that point yet, so I can't say that.
Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good wet evening.
So, yeah. I don't know. Hardness that getting
That is shocking.
Hi, good evening. This is June 17th, at 7 p.m. Get started. We have a call to order, please. That would help. That would help. This is June 17th, and we're going to have first the call to order. Roll call.
Mr. Hasse,
Here.
Mr. Seaman,
Here.
Mr. Coiner,
Here.
Mr. Seropoulos,
Here.
Mr. Vesey,
Here.
Ms. McCumber,
Here.
Mr. Petrantoni, Ms. Vigil.
Thank you. Number 2, approval of minutes on May 20th, 2019.
I make a motion to approve minutes as noted.
Thank you. Second?
A second.
Thank you. All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Passed. Number 3, quasi-judicial announcement and swearing in of speakers.
This is a quasi-judicial proceeding where the Planning and Zoning Board acts in a quasi-judicial rather than a legislative capacity. At a quasi-judicial hearing, it is not the board's function to make law, but rather to apply law that has already been established. In a quasi-judicial hearing, the board is required by law to make findings of fact based upon the evidence presented at the hearing and apply those findings of fact to previously established criteria contained in the Code of Ordinances in order to make a legal decision regarding the application before it. The board may only consider evidence at this hearing that the law considers competent, substantial, and relevant to the issues. If the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has met the criteria established in the Code of Ordinance, then the board is required by law to find in favor of the applicant. By the same token, if the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has failed to meet the criteria established in the Code of Ordinance, then the board is required by law to find against the applicant. Are there any members of the board this evening wishing to disclose any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest?
No.
Seeing none, if anyone wishing to speak this evening could please stand and raise their right hand to be sworn in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So sworn.
Okay, thank you. Move on to number 4, application number 18-159, conditional use approval. Allow expansion of an existing mini warehouse used by converting existing commercial retail space to mini storage use located at 1730 South Pinellas Avenue in the Highway Business District, zoning district. Staff, do you have some information?
should we let the record reflect?
Okay. Is he the applicant?
My car.
Yes.
Oh.
He's the regular member.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you. Now, we actually have a full board tonight. Okay, thank you.
All right, so this is a proposal to, for a conditional use approval to expand an existing mini storage warehouse use in the Highway Business District. The expansion would occur by converting a little over 16,000 square feet of existing commercial retail space on the property. This was continued from last month's meeting. Reason being, what we have is an existing 4.1 acre piece of property that is in the incorporated area of the city. Part of the public storage is on a separate parcel that's about an acre in size and is not in the city. Not sure how that happened, and I researched annexations back to about the mid-90s, and I haven't figured it out yet, but we could not hear it last month because the applicant was asked to revise and was able to revise the project just to reflect the portion in the incorporated city. So both of the buildings, the retail buildings, are obviously on that parcel, and the request is to convert those to the mini storage. This project involves mostly interior and some exterior renovations to those buildings, and then some minor site upgrades that the applicants propose to bring the site up to code as much as possible, including the handicap parking, dumpster enclosure, loading zones, landscaping, those sorts of things. So with respect to your conditional use review criteria, item 1, the Technical Review Committee last reviewed this project at their meeting of April 4th, 2019, and found that the site and technical requirements of the Land Development Code have been met. With respect to item 2, the question there is whether the property is being put to appropriate use and is compatible with existing and planned uses in the area. Staff feels that this is not an appropriate expansion for this property or this area, based on 2 main reasons. One being the surrounding land use and land use context in the area and the South Pinellas corridor in this area, and the second being the aesthetic or architectural, if you will, look of proposed look of the property. The South Pinellas Avenue corridor is a main arterial corridor that, as you know, extends into the city's downtown. It's an area of diverse uses, mix of uses, including retail, restaurants, offices, personal services, industrial, light industrial, and higher density residential, including condominiums, the apartments, as you know, that are going in, and also the hospital, which is a higher employer, is also in this area. This is an area of slower moving traffic and more congested, and it is on the part of DOT, really a deliberate management area for enhancement of multimodal access and enhancement of activity and diversity of uses in this area. So they're almost kind of embracing the fact, obviously this corridor will not be widened in this area. They're embracing the fact that it is a busy corridor, but looking at the local character of the corridor all the way down into other jurisdictions in Palm Harbor and Dunedin and in those areas, and looking to enhance the multimodal experience. As you know, we have the Pinellas Trail nearby, some sidewalk network on the road, and we're looking at expanding that. The Jolly Trolley transit service runs this corridor, and DOT is looking at mostly lane repurposing to enhance that pattern. As mentioned, it's a currently active area with multiple uses. supplying local consumer goods and services and local employment. And staff feels that the mini warehouse use will really kind of detract and remove from this land use context of activity and employment base in local or small businesses, and that the mini warehouse use is more appropriate on US 19 and maybe up in the industrial area of the city. With respect to the second kind of area that we looked at was the compatibility of the look of the property. The applicant sought to, and staff did discuss with the applicant, sort of mitigating the change to a storage facility by trying to leave the building look like retail, kind of as a short summary. The applicant has proposed to leave the storefronts basically as they are, and has supplied you with a set of elevation views. And those elevation views include, obviously, the locked front doors would be required because the interior will be renovated. So there will be no access from the front. Blackout film on the windows, repainting the coping on the roof to the orange, I guess to tie it in with the rest of the property. Some signage, which is not specified, and the rest of the building elements, the brick and stucco, would be retained. And again, this is an area that's the gateway to the city's downtown. It's an area that Forward Pinellas is actively developing a cultural corridor to highlight kind of the local character of each area on South Pinellas. And we feel like this look, that we need some more work on that, or maybe, I'm not sure, enhanced landscaping or some more work or more detail or information about what we could do with the building, what is the signage, things like that, in order to try to have it not detract from the area. It just looked like kind of an empty property as you go by. And the applicant has proposed to bring the landscaping up to code, so that is noted. The city feels that the conditional use is not consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, and I've listed several policies there, some of which repeat some of the items I just mentioned. A couple other things I'll highlight on page 5 under Objective 6.2, highlighting just the available spaces for small business or local businesses. My observation of the corridor, and the applicant may have some input on this, is that there really is not a high vacancy rate that you can physically see on that corridor. The plazas, the professional offices, are all full. So the question is, this is an area that is currently available and being populated by businesses. And so we feel like the removal or kind of displacement, if you will, of that space detracts from the corridor. That kind of covers Objective 6.3. At the same time, while the mini storage use will definitely reduce traffic impacts, as I said, this corridor is being managed with the kind of acknowledgement and almost embracing the traffic pattern that we see there. And it will obviously reduce employment on this property anyway. So, because the mini storage will not require, I think the applicant can speak to that, but more than 2 or 3 employees. Item number 4, the application will not result in any significant adverse impact to historical resources or to the environment. The applicant has certified that the existing stormwater system is operating as designed. so there are no impacts there. Item number 5, difficult to say whether this change would adversely affect adjoining property values. I'm not really going to go there. I would say the removal of retail just removes the consumer activity from that site, other than for the storage. So I would just note that. With respect to item number 6, this will not require the extension of additional public facilities. The site is already served with public facilities. And item number 7, again, those are available to the site. With displacement of business or business space, it's difficult to say where those businesses might go or where they might seek, if it's elsewhere in the city or outside the city, whether there'd be any indirect impacts as far as the growth pattern and that broader issue addressed by item number 7. This application was publicly noticed. We did not receive any comments, and staff is recommending denial of resolution 2019-19 on this one.
Thank you. Is the applicant here tonight? Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board?
I have a question for on policy 6.34. So when it says approximately 15 to 20 commercial spaces, we're saying that these are potential businesses that would be essentially displaced due to the plan in favor of just one single.
Yes,
Okay.
and I did approximately. I'd like the applicant to be able to speak to how much space is there. I just did that based on counting the doors. Obviously, sometimes spaces are combined to make, so it might not be that many, but I didn't count the businesses that are still open there. There's a few with signs still up, but yeah, this would be in favor of one occupant of the entire property.
I just want to clarify. I don't know if I misheard or something like that, so I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? So at this time, we'd like to ask the applicant if he'd like to come up and explain what you're trying to do. Please state your name and address. Yes, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Matt Femel with Kimley Horn, and I'm located at 655 North Franklin Street in Tampa, Florida. I just want to know if there's a time limit today, because I'd like to speak, and I'm going to speak briefly, but then I was also going to turn it over to Public Storage to speak as well, and I just want to make sure that we weren't going to run out of time.
Are you talking for hours?
I probably have 2 minutes.
Oh, yes, there's a time limit.
We'll be
No,
we'll be short.
You're good. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I'm going to talk about a little bit about the engineering, and then I'm going to turn it over to Rick McKeever with Public Storage, and he's going to talk about the business uses. And we have a little bit of a different analysis. We went and drove around, and we talked to some brokers and also some real estate owners in the area, and we came up with a little bit of different analysis than what was presented before you today. But I'm the engineer of record for Public Storage, and we're here today to request a conditional use approval to convert 16,355 square feet of existing commercial retail space to mini warehouse. Public Storage is currently operating 268 storage units in the rear of the property, and we're requesting to convert the existing retail space to 164 additional units. As part of the proposed development, we will be enhancing the corridor by installing a new sidewalk along Pinellas Avenue and installing perimeter buffer, shrubs, and trees along with landscape islands to break up the existing parking rows. The proposed conversion will provide the look and feel of a retail storefront, which meets the goals and objectives of the corridor, and which meets the objective. We've worked with staff to make sure that we have met these objectives by providing enhanced landscaping. And some of these enhancements that we've been providing, whether we've worked out with staff, are upgraded ADA spaces. So we've looked at the parking lot and we've updated the ADA spaces. We provided an ADA connection to the pathway. We've provided a new sidewalk out front. I don't know if you've driven by the site, but the sidewalk out front is in disrepair, so we're providing a new sidewalk. We've also gone through and we're enhancing the curb islands in the front of the site to provide mulch landscaping to keep the mulch within the landscape beds. We provided a dumpster enclosure so that we can properly screen the dumpster. And we're going to be adding 11 trees to development. So we've worked closely with staff to make sure that we are meeting those retail needs of the community. We're also enhancing the storefront of the building. We're painting the top of the building. And then we're also leaving the retail feel, because one of the discussions we've had with staff is they didn't want it to look like a mini warehouse. They want it to look like a retail establishment. So we've kept that retail look at the corridor. The place has been, I think for about 8 years, we've had the use at that area, and they've, haven't had full occupancy of the establishment. So what we're doing is we're converting to a use that is a market-driven use for the community, and that we're also providing that look and feel of the retail corridor. So this time I'd like to turn it over to Rick to explain a little bit more about the business use that we're proposing.
Please state your name and address, please.
Rick McKeever, 650 Island Way, Clearwater, Florida. I'm basically going to speak to the business side of this. I see in Tarpon Springs, you guys have got a big development going on in Mears where you're putting in some apartments. And I'd read I think it was in the quarterlies, that there was hopes that when they extend the Mears corridor, that will bring in more commercial real estate, commercial business. Public Storage has been operating here I've been here with them for 28 years, and we've been at that property. It was an acquisition property that I was a part of, and that the commercial real estate in the front has always been problematic to keep rented. The turnover rate is high. We can average a 65% occupancy rate, and it's a turnover of about every 3 years we get a new tenant. We've had one tenant in that building that's been there since I've been there, and he's a dentist. He's at one of our lowest rates, 72 cents a square foot. So the use in that hodgepodge between Alderman and Mears is quite diverse, as she'd mentioned. We want, now on the mini storage side, we've maintained for the last 8 years a 95% occupancy. That's all the tenants are from Tarpon Springs. So there's a big use there where we're benefiting the community with mini storage. We've never dropped lower than 95% over the last 8 years. So from 65 to 95 is a pretty big drop in occupancy. The other portion of this, the corridor where it ends at where I see it from Alderman to the hospital, again, is quite a hodgepodge of different businesses and mom and pop shops. There's a few commercial real estates there. There's a lot of business parks where they have open businesses, but this lends itself for somebody to drive up, do a retail, and then leave. The Texaco station has 1,700 square feet presently available to rent, and the old Winn-Dixie Market is at 17% occupancy. Where they moved Winn-Dixie, they're full occupancy, but it's a brand new building. That's where the retail is headed. They want to be into the nice new brand new building with an anchor store. And that's why everybody down the way, they kind of struggle. You get a lot of turnover in your commercial real estate. So that's why, we propose to just make us mini storage. Let us do what we do best and provide the community a good service of mini storage. So that's my kind of spiel on why we want to do this. We are better at providing mini storage. Again, as Matt had pointed out, we're gonna plant trees. We're gonna enhance the front of this property. It's still gonna have the commercial look. If you don't like something that we're doing in the front of the building, we'll change it. We just want to make sure that we can provide a service that we're good at and continue to provide the service that we know we're good at, which is mini storage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. I'm sure we have several questions.
Okay, go ahead.
I have several.
All right.
So, number one, you're saying you're going to enhance the front of the building, and don't you think that if you have done that in the past, that you might have had better occupancy?
We have done it in the past. We've planted grass there. It's hard to keep systems operational in an area. But if you look at that corridor between Alderman and Mears, we're probably one of the best looking properties out there. So I don't think that the enhancements will make a big difference to a potential customer, a retail customer. It's the use. We're one of the nicest ones in that corridor.
Okay. And then what happens to the existing businesses? For example, the dentist that's
The
there.
dentist, well, we'll give them time. We'll either buy them out of their contract or give them time to relocate.
And you're gonna turn this into a storage facility, but it's gonna look like a storefront.
It's gonna look just like it looks now. It's not helping, it's not hurting our business behind it. I'm at 95% occupancy.
So I understand, I know storage is a big deal nowadays.
Yeah, it is.
They're almost always 95% or more. So, and then you say you're also gonna make it ADA. Why? It's storage.
That's just the requirements.
Okay. Any more board members with some questions? Certainly there's gotta be.
Yeah, I have a question regarding the actual storefront. You've got functional and operating doors, and some of them lead to a wall partition, some of them lead to an adjacent unit. How's that gonna work? I mean, that's really not gonna function.
The exterior, the front, the Alt 19 will be blocked off and.
But according to this, you've got fully functional doors here. You've got full swing doors here in the architectural plan. Some leading into other units, adjacent units.
Yeah, that's just drawn. This should all be shut. We're all locked down.
Well, I'm sorry, it's not indicated. That's the reason I'm questioning
My
that.
apologies. Yeah, this storefront is all gonna be locked down, all the access will come.
Okay, okay.
A gate system on the property where people code in and code out. And so they'll code in and all the business, all the transactions, all the moving will happen behind those buildings.
So those will basically be dummy doors?
Correct.
Non-functioning dummy doors?
Non-functioning dummy doors.
Okay.
Yep. With a storefront look.
Gotcha. Okay. And I take it the ADA will be towards the back?
Right.
The larger
Our
units?
office will be the only retail that will remain. Our present office, our retail rental office, and it'll have an ADA compliant parking lot or
Gotcha.
parking system. Plus as Matt mentioned, what's the requirement for a
5
landscape
points.
buffer?
Oh,
Five parking spaces. So we're gonna add full curbing around all of that and then landscape buffers with palm trees or whatever tree that, you guys.
now
will pass.
the front part of that property is in disrepair. There's broken plumbing pipes, or
Oh, yeah.
irrigation pipes,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
ditches. I mean,
All
it's
that's gonna
in
be
disrepair.
resodded and fixed.
Okay.
Yeah, with a brand-new sidewalk that will go the extent of the property.
So my question would be, why haven't you fixed it? If you're gonna make it look bad so you can turn it into something else, is that?
Well, it wasn't our intention to make it look bad. It's just falling at the right time that we want to convert it to mini storage. So this would be the most opportune time to do it all at one time.
I have a question. What are your current tenant list? Who's occupying the front right now?
I have, let's see, we've got the dentist, we've got All Star Service Industries.
Who's the dentist?
The dentist, let me find it.
Dr. Contos?
Yes.
I don't think Mr. Contos is there anymore.
He just purchased another building.
Did he? Is that what it was? I'm wondering. Oh,
Yeah, well,
just
his
curious.
lease
as-
is
as
up.
he's my dentist, and I went there, and he's not actually there, and you keep saying the dentist is there, and he's not. And
His lease is not up yet, so he's still paying rent if he's not there. Yeah, the last renter lease is up in 2020, and that's the Flex Recoveries, All Star Services and Industries. Everybody else is up this year.
So what is your occupancy right now? Sorry,
At-
percentage-wise or number?
It's 60, our present occupancy is 65.97%.
And how many numbers of businesses is that?
Excuse me?
What's the number of businesses? Is that
The number of businesses are 2, 3, 4. I'm sorry. 6.
Well, there was a higher occupancy, because there were several people that I knew that had few of those units.
Yeah.
That had to leave.
That had to leave?
They told me they had to get out.
Oh.
They were told to get out. So anyway,
Well,
there was a higher occupancy rate.
I'm sure that it's fluctuated, but it's on an average of about 65% over the last 5 years or 8 years. Yeah, because, sometimes we get some people that stay, but the turnover rate is tremendous. I mean, that end unit is probably turned over 10, 12 times.
Any more questions from the board? Okay, thank you. At this point, we will close the, no, not yet. Oh, anybody else? Thank God I have you here. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak about this storage unit? For or against? Seeing none? So now I can close the public discussion and leave it up to the board to have further discussion. So, I know,
I have a question for the staff. What is behind this property?
What is, I'm sorry, behind it?
What is, if anything, behind this property? Looks like wood.
I
There's woods.
think it's
Yeah, there's wood.
maybe even wetlands. I'm not sure. Yeah, there's a lot of wetlands in this area.
Is there any access at all to that property behind it?
Any access through the back of the property? None that I know of.
maybe through Pinellas Rental. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board, staff? Or any questions or comments amongst ourselves?
I have a question, and it's a simple one. I want to make sure that I'm reading all this right. It appears that the staff feels that, and this is a yes or no answer, is that it appears that the staff feels that this conditional use is not in the best interest or compliant with our current code.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to add to that. So we know that the old Winn-Dixie Shopping Center is pretty well empty now. And he's asking just to take away some space. Wouldn't, by taking away those offices, wouldn't that maybe force some people to maybe look into the Winn-Dixie shopping area that's empty?
It may. I can tell you that we've had several conversations with Wells Fargo that owns the Winn-Dixie, and I'm not sure what the status of leasing space is there. They're actively looking at
One of my
different options for the property. So and to sell the property. So if when they do lease space, if something comes about, they're actively looking at doing some redevelopment of that property at this point. So I don't know that they're actively seeking, but I could be wrong. But yeah, we have an applicant that just moved in there with a pizza place. I mean, yeah.
About a year ago. One of my pet peeves has always been we allow new buildings to be built without filling in space that we already have. And it really bothers me to see all these empty buildings when we're okaying to build a new building someplace when we don't fill up what we already have. So just a comment.
Not part of the criteria that you should be considering for the
Just a comment. Yes, thank you. Personal comment, thank you, not a board comment. Any other comments or questions for staff from the board? No. Then, at this time, I'm asking thank you, a motion.
I'd like to make a
to
motion.
pass or not pass.
I'd like to motion, may I?
May.
I'd like to make a motion that resolution number 2019-19 is denied.
I'll second. Thank you. Roll call.
Mr. Petrantoni?
If I can clarify, this vote is to deny the motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
The vote is to deny the application.
The application, yeah, sorry, my apologies for that. I'll vote yes.
Ms. McCumber,
Yes.
Mr. Vesey,
Yes.
Mr. Stavropoulos,
Yes.
Mr. Coiner,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Hasse.
No. Thank you. Application is denied. Okay. Next is application number 19-36, conditional use approval. Allow construction of a second single-family detached dwelling on property located at 410/412, East Tarpon Avenue in the T4A Residential plus Retail Office of the Special Area Plan. Staff, you have some comment?
Okay,
That's not the next.
did we skip one? Or did I give you the wrong agenda?
Application number 1859, and next is number 5, application
1935
-35, according to this.
is the land use and rezoning.
Oh, did I read the wrong one? I apologize.
That's okay.
So, excuse me, folks. So the application number 19-35, land use and rezoning amendments. Amend the future land use map from ROG Residential Office General to RM Residential Medium. And amend the zoning map from RO Residential Office to R-60 1 and 2 Family Residential District for property located at 721 South Diston Avenue. My apologies, Dan.
Okay, thanks. Yes, and this is at 721 South Diston Avenue. That's on the northeast corner of Mango Street and Diston Avenue. And basically, the applicant with this proposal would like to construct a second single-family residence on this property. It appears that the property, best of my knowledge, had an office on it originally that was converted to a single-family home, and the applicant would like to construct a second detached single-family home. The only way to do that with the size of the property, what it is, would be to rezone it to R60. So that's really kind of what's driving this application. The tables on page 3 give you the comparison for the future land use and proposed future land use. This change would require a change to the countywide plan as well, so that comparison is there. Basically, the property does not have sufficient area, as I mentioned, to accommodate 2 single-family detached dwellings unless it is rezoned to the R60 zoning district. The nearest R60 zoning is about 2 blocks to the north of this property. The general area here is higher density residential with a mix of housing types, including single-family, multifamily, and there's a mobile home park to the east. Obviously, well, as you know, Mango Street will be connecting to Mears Boulevard, so this will be a through corridor within approximately a year. So that is another item for the context of this rezoning. The residential medium future land use category is requested because that would make the R60 zoning consistent with the comprehensive plan. So that's what's driving it. It's kind of all driven by the rezoning. That would accommodate 2 single-family detached dwellings on 2 separate lots. The property's combined into 1 lot at this time. The area around this property is in the future land use residential urban category now. A change to residential medium for this property would not be compatible with that kind of surrounding area. It would limit the property substantially compared to what could be built on it now and what the area is trending toward, which is the higher density in this area and the different types of housing. So with respect to the future land use change, the amendment does not seem to be compatible with the long-term end towards which the future land use map kind of directs this area. With respect to the rezoning, for the reasons just stated, the R60 zoning designation is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. The R60 is really kind of a neighborhood conservation zoning district meant to kind of memorialize some of the older plats. This was and is part of an older plat, but this area, two lots were combined, and this area in particular is trending toward multifamily residential and some non-residential use. The R60 zoning would restrict the property, again, to uses that would not be compatible or not kind of trend toward what the predominant character of the area is, including the diversity of housing types. The RO zoning that the applicant is currently in would allow a duplex, but the applicant does not wish to build a duplex. So they wish to split the lot and do the two single family homes. Again, Mango Street will experience an increased level of traffic when that's connected to Mears. So that kind of will help to trend this area towards more kind of a busier area and a higher activity area as well. With respect to item 3, this rezoning would allow the property kind of to revert back to a condition that is not consistent with this neighborhood. As far as this area is an older plat, but it's really starting to change to more of a multifamily pattern. With respect to number 4, the amendment, if granted, would not adversely impact or exceed the capacity of the city to provide facilities. The TRC did review this application at its May 2nd, 2019 meeting, and the comments are included there. This rezoning and amendment was properly noticed and no comments were received from the public, and staff is recommending denial of the future land use change from residential office general to residential medium, and the zoning change from residential office to 1 and 2 R60, 1 and 2 family residential. Are there any questions?
Thank you. I believe this is over by the fundamental school, is that where this
That's
area?
correct. Yes, it's right across the street is a church and the fundamental school.
Is the applicant here tonight? Would the applicant get to this? Members? No?
I'm trying to wrap my head around how the division and the construction of 2 individual homes is at an R60 is not consistent with multifamily. I was just listening and reading at the same time, and I wasn't quite grasping how it's not consistent. And then we throw in the old plat per se, and that it had been combined into one and back. So if you would help me understand how this request is not consistent, I think you said with the movement or the direction of that area. Just one more time for me.
One thing about this property, it's a little bit unique because it's one piece of property with a countywide designation, a future land use designation, and a zoning that's just on that property. Now, if you're going to ask me what the history of that was, I don't know. I'm guessing it had to do with, and maybe the applicant can speak to this, that it apparently was an office to start out with. Usually zonings, and especially future land use and countywide, don't cover such a small piece of property, right? You guys have seen that before. So the question is, if we go to R60, part of the context that staff has to look at is, just because this small piece of property has its own kind of zoning in this area, do we do that again? And if we do it again, we have to review it in the context of the future land use map, and that's probably more the driving issue here. So we're going to drop the density a little bit on future land use. We're going to limit the types of housing on a future land use and comprehensive plan context, kind of continuing what's going on there. It kind of its own special zoning is, it's tough for us to recommend approval of that because it's really not consistent with what we're supposed to be looking at on a future land use. The area surrounding is residential urban, and then across the street is institutional. And you really don't get to the single family kind of memorial, conservation kind of zoning till you're up the street 700 or 800 feet. And so it's very difficult to find something like this consistent with the comprehensive plan just because of that context. I'm not sure if that helps.
It does. I'm getting closer. So
Okay.
perhaps I would just use a color as that it's a green in the middle of a sea of red, and it's the only green, and it's only ever going to be the green, and green is going backwards and not forwards.
It's green now. Going to R60 would be going backwards.
Even farther backwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
If the green were to change to multifamily, and I did discuss that with the applicant, but that didn't work for what he wanted.
And forgive me, that would be the duplex recommendation.
A duplex could be built right now.
Okay.
Yeah, and could be in multifamily, but he did not. Yeah, so we looked at multifamily to do, whatever might fit on it, but that wasn't really something that he was interested in. Reason being, what's happening here is when you're proposing single family, the multifamily district, residential office, a lot of these districts revert back to, this is going to make you more confused, the R70 dimensional standards if you're building a single family detached dwelling. That's what the applicant ran into, is those zonings don't really contemplate a lot of single family, right? So they just say, if you want a single family detached, you have to use R70 dimensional district standards. The lots, he couldn't get the lot sizes big enough, and I believe the lot widths big enough on the property that's there to do that. With R60, he could, which is why he's requesting it. And he might be able to elaborate more, but yeah, so those discussions of changing maybe to RM or leaving it RO didn't really serve his needs.
Thank you.
Most of the area around there has multifamily apartments and things like that. Right?
Yeah, I mean, there is single family. I think there's a couple of duplexes, but yeah, there's multifamily. There's, of course, the RV park it fits the higher density residential, mobile home park, not an RV park, higher density future land use. So if that's ever redeveloped, that will be a higher density, property as well.
Any more questions, staff? So at this time, we'd like to ask the applicant if he'd like to make any comments. Okay,
Just for the record, the applicant declined to make a comment.
yes,
On the microphone.
thank you. It's all right.
I'm just here for technicalities.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Thank you very much. So, fine, okay, then at this, is there anyone else in the neighborhood that would like to speak? If so, please state your name.
Yep, I
He
can
needs to
swear
be
you
sworn
in.
in.
Once
Just
you,
come on
once you
over
come
here,
to the
ma'am.
podium, I'm happy to swear you in.
Okay.
All right. Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
So sworn.
Thank you. Please state your name and address.
My name is Annie Dabbs, and I reside at 803 South Distance Avenue. I am just across the street from the applicant's property there on Distance Avenue. I just need this clarification because I keep hearing that there are multifamily homes in the neighborhood. There are more single-family homes in the neighborhood on my present block and the next block, and then over on North Street. And of course, I'm sure that can't be related to Mango Circle because that's another area, because those are attached homes, but it's not out on Distance, and I just needed the clarification as to how you can say there are more multifamily dwellings there than there are single. There are more single-family dwellings there. And across the street is, on one whole block, is just, well, there's Mount Moriah AME Church, plus the part of the Cops and Kids Center on Harrison Street.
Yeah, and I did not do a count of how many dwellings, and that's why when you asked if it was mostly multifamily, I did mention there are several single-family homes there. So, right, I did want to recognize that there are
To that, up
single-family.
on Harrison Street, there is the, I guess it's the city's attached complex there on one block, but that still is not more, what I'm saying, multifamily. There are more single-family homes there than multifamilies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to comment for or against this application? No. All right. At this point, then, we will close the public discussion and open discussion between board members. Do any of the board members have any questions or further comment? No?
Can you do a clarification for me? Is it the size of the original property that, or the building that's already on the first part of the property? Is it a problem with the lot size in order to put another home on the other lot, or?
Under the current zoning, the two lots, the property cannot be split into, well, let me start with this. To build a second single-family detached home, it's got to be on its own lot that meets the lot dimension requirements. There's the existing home, so the applicant has to split the property such that that home has a conforming setback. That's not really a problem. It's not that. but also so that that lot that the existing home is on, plus the new lot, has the minimum footage of area and the minimum width. And I'd have to look back, but I think the minimum square feet was not met. I can't remember what the width, but I can look that up. But the applicant did work hard, has his architect go back and draw it up a few times and try to come up with that, and it just couldn't meet the current standard for what he wanted.
Is in the
With
rest of the neighborhood.
R60, what I just described can be done.
Right, okay.
Just for clarification, if this had never been rezoned and combined to do the office, and it was still two separate lots, would they be able to build a single-family house on the one lot that they're wanting to do that?
If it was still two separate lots, you've got two lots in common ownership, it would be a legal non-conforming lot. Under our current code, they would have to go for a variance because of the common ownership, but I can tell you that the lots would have met the variance criteria. That's all I can say. You know, they would have had to go to the Board of Adjustment, but the two separate lots would have met the criteria for the build on a non-conforming lot.
And if it had still been two separate lots, and that this one lot they're talking about was an original lot and it had never been rezoned?
Rezoned to RO, you mean?
Office, yeah. If it still had its original zoning, like the rest of the neighborhood, and this one lot was open, would they be able to build what they're wanting to build on it?
I did not research what the zoning was before RO, but I would just say that the existing non-conforming platted lot, kind of standard in our code, the basic idea is to recognize existing single-family non-conforming lots. So I would say whether it was, I don't know what it would have been prior to the RO, but probably, yeah, I would say that it could have been
A lot
built
of
on.
lots in Tarpon are 50-foot buildings. Live in the grapefruit bowl, they're all 50-foot lots, so this would be, okay.
The older homes too,
I don't get it. So, are there any further questions? Could I then have a motion to approve or deny application number 1935? 19-35, excuse me.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Mr. Petrantoni,
I'll vote yes.
Ms. McCumber,
Yes,
Mr. Vesey,
Yes.
Mr. Seropoulos,
Yes.
Mr. Coiner,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Hasse.
Yes. The application number 1935 passes. Thank you very much. Moving on to number 6, application 19-36, conditional use approval. Allow construction of a second single-family detached dwelling on property located at 410/412 East Tarpon Avenue in the T4A Residential Plus Retail/Office of the Special Area Plan.
And this is a request to allow construction of a second single-family residence on on a property with an existing single-family residence. That existing residence is addressed 412 East Tarpon. The second residence would be addressed 410 East Tarpon. And the second residence would go behind the primary residence that is there and be accessed from the alley in the back of the property. This is in the T4A residential plus retail office district in the downtown Gateway Character District of the Special Area Plan. With respect to your conditional use criteria, the property can accommodate a second dwelling in conformance with the density standards of the T4A district, and it is subject to conditional use because it's a detached single-family dwelling. We've had a couple of these. This is that area where the special area plan, infill plan, wants to see higher density and different kind of housing types, apartments, or mixed use, or live work, or something like that. So when you propose single-family detached, it makes it conditional, even though on this property, we have a property that's large enough to accommodate the second dwelling unit. It's got the density. So we really are kind of infilling here, and the code's not kind of recognizing that. So this is still technically a conditional use. The city's technical review committee reviewed the project at their meeting of May 2nd, 2019, and determined that it complies with the land development code. And with respect to item 2, this is located adjacent to other residential and low-intensity office-type uses that are proposed for this Transect district and will be built in conformance with the district. With respect to item 3, the conditional use is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. And with respect to item 4, this is in the historic district, and the applicant has received approval from the Heritage Preservation Board for this project. There are no environmental issues here. With respect to item 5, this project will fit the character of the neighborhood and is not expected to adversely affect property values. Item 6, the development will not require the extension of public services. There are public services already available at this site. And item 7, again, this does encourage and follow the patterns anticipated or basically encouraged by the special area plan of higher density infill in this area of the city. So it will not adversely affect the city's growth patterns. This item was publicly noticed, and we did receive one written email comment that I passed out prior to the meeting. And staff is recommending approval of the project. And the applicant, I do have the condition, the applicant does have a building permit application already submitted, awaiting this conditional use review.
Thank you. This is on Tarpon Avenue, and most of these are businesses along that way.
It's one of the old buildings.
Yeah.
One of those historic buildings, but
Right,
I don't understand. There's a
Why would you-
structure in the back already,
right.
or a home or something.
Probably a garage.
Looks like a garage, yeah.
Well, no, it's over to the left. Oh, that is,
That's the proposed, that's the.
oh, this is the proposed, I see.
Yes, the
The empty lot.
The
I
property
see.
has an existing garage and carport
Gotcha.
on the southeast corner, and the proposed home would be at the southwest corner,
Yeah.
adjacent to the alley there.
I would think the city would want more commercial buildings on the street than residential buildings.
Well, that
And
back- that
T4A is a mixed district, so,
backs up to an alley.
yeah.
Yeah, it's right up. And that is a accessible alley in the rear. Of,
Yes, it is.
yeah.
Is there enough
There
parking?
was a comment by a gentleman that said that he is, he's concerned
That's
that the alley is not, it's unpaved, but I don't think that has anything to do with access. It still has access. Be nice to see that.
My question is around parking. It looks like that's like a parking area now. Would there be enough parking spots for 2 homes on that property?
The special area plan is, as you've probably experienced before, a little more lenient with parking.
Okay.
So 3 spaces are required instead of 2 for each. It's 1.5 for each dwelling. So the existing garage and carport area do serve to provide the sufficient space for parking.
What is the condition of the alley? Because the comment we have indicates it's in bad condition. Has anybody actually looked at it?
I think it's like gravel and dirt and stuff, not a paved road. It's narrow.
Yeah.
I've driven down there before. Pickup truck is fine, but car may be suitable for it.
Well, that's something I'll take up with the city.
There's like a lot of roads.
So that's, to get that resurfaced or whatever, that's a city issue, so.
Exactly.
Can y'all just talk for the record, one at a time and into your microphones, and make sure we're not testifying. So if you have a question or whatnot for the city, go ahead, and then save comments for discussion time. So that's something that we consider.
Thank you.
Of course.
So at this time, does anyone have any more questions for the staff? No. At this time, then, I'd like to open it up to any public comments.
Just for the record, is the applicant here?
And I neglected to say that he could not be here tonight. I'm sorry. He did call me today.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so for the record, the applicant is not here.
And is there anyone in the public sector that would like to ask any questions or comments for or against? Seeing none, then we will close the public portion and discussion amongst the board. Any discussion, comments?
We have the authority to ask that the alley be improved.
That discussion was had at TRC. As I think I heard you all mentioning, this is kind of a gravel, kind of a mixed, hard surface alley. If you do require that, the applicant would be responsible for paving the portion adjacent to his property. Public Works at this time doesn't have a plan to pave that alley. They are satisfied with the surface as far as that it can support and accommodate vehicles. One thing I will say is the special area plan wants you to use alleys more. And so that is something that we're running into more and more. The city always looks very carefully at paving alleys just because of the stormwater issues. If it's not, if there aren't, if it's not low or flooding, there's a hesitancy to pave all the alleys without really carefully looking at it. I could ask that, as far as Public Works, what their plan might be in the future to pave this alley. But at the TRC, they recommended that it stay kind of a gravel surface.
Well, and even just cleaning it up and improving it a little bit, or using a variety of different methods of stabilization could accomplish that without paving.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you wanted to ask that the applicant work with the city to maybe improve the surface adjacent to their property, consistent with city standards, you could certainly, which might be something like re-graveling that portion. But the applicant, we could not ask the applicant to do anything other than what's in front of the property.
Right.
I have a question in regards to use of the proposed construction. Although it says single-family residence, it appears to me that it just appears that perhaps the intent is transient use, like short-term Airbnb. Does that in any way affect the T4 T4A district of the special area plan? In other words, if we were to approve, are we given the green light for a short-term rental at this location, and would that adversely affect the existing nature of the neighborhood? Please take your time. Those were a lot of words anyway.
I thought it looked like an in-law suite.
No, it's not. The applicant just personal, conversation in the course of TRC is that this was intended to be a house for his mother or mother-in-law. Just looking it up, short-term rental is a conditional use in this district. If the applicant wanted to do a seasonal or short-term, they would have to come back with a conditional use proposal. Right now, it's for permanent resident.
That's the intent of the applicant.
Yes. You are not approving a seasonal short-term rental tonight.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions?
I have one question for the board. For this, I know there's a lot of concern about the alleyway road. Just in case there are guests, et cetera, so you can't park on that alleyway. It's too narrow. If you parked on the alley, it would block off all access to and from it.
Yep. Any other questions or comments?
I would just follow on that comment right there. You're correct, in fact, that you couldn't park in the alley, and I don't know if you've gone down, I think it's called Gross Street. That's the adjacent street of which this is on the corner of. I don't recall if there's actual street parking there. I think that parking might be, as staff mentioned, lenient, might be too generous a word, that there is in fact no parking at all available at that corner.
I don't think there's any alleys in Tarpon that you could park a car in and not block. So, I mean.
Well, there's some, but they're
Uh-huh.
very few.
Right.
Because they're maximizing the use of their property.
Any other comments or questions? None. Okay, then I would ask for a motion to approve or deny application number 19-36. Conditional use approval, allow construction of a second single-family detached dwelling on property located at 410/412 East Tarpon Avenue in the T4A residential retail office of the special area plan.
I would move to approve with the condition worded something to the effect that the applicant work with city staff to determine appropriate improvement to the alley, not necessarily paving, certainly just something to make the surface improved, a little more permanent, a little more stable. I know that's way too many words, so.
I'll second.
Thank you. Take a vote, please.
Mr. Petrantoni,
I'll vote yes to approve.
Ms. McCumber,
Yes.
Mr. Vesey,
Yes.
Mr. Saropoulos,
Yes.
Mr. Coiner,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Hasse.
Yes. Thank you. Motion or the application is approved. Next is number 7, application number 19-40, conditional use approval. Allow operation of a seasonal/short-term rental on property located at 18 West Orange Street in the T5D North Pinellas Avenue Transect District of the Special Area Plan.
And this is an example of a conditional use required application for a seasonal short-term rental. This is at 18 West Orange Street in the T5D district. And this is an existing single-family residence, basically right near the between North Pinellas and Grand Boulevard, so right near North Pinellas, like one property away. On page 2, you have the definition of seasonal short-term rental there for your review. This is an older property built in the 60s, so it's not, doesn't conform to all the zoning district standards as far as the placement of the structure, et cetera, but it does have the required access and parking for a single-family dwelling, so that is existing. The city's technical review committee reviewed the project on May 2nd, 2019, and found it conforms with the land development code. With respect to item 2 on page 3 of your conditional use criteria, this property is in the downtown character district of the special area plan, and this area encourages activity and a mix of uses, higher densities, including the operation of short-term residential rentals. This seasonal rental will be consistent with the district and will meet the spirit of the downtown character district in promoting support. Really, the vision statement for that district is to promote or the support of businesses downtown, especially on Tarpon Avenue. So this would be consistent with that. With respect to item 3, it would be consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. And item 4, there are no adverse impacts to the environment or historic resources. This is simply a change of use. There's no development really being proposed on the property. The short-term rental is adjacent to a mix of residential, commercial, and office uses in this district. And all the other city ordinances would be applied: noise, trash, all those types of property maintenance. So those would always apply to this property. So as far as the character of the neighborhood being that mix, and with those ordinances in place, it's expected to not affect, adversely affect adjoining property values. The residence is already served by city facilities. And again, it's located in that downtown character district, and it's not expected to adversely affect growth patterns in the area or the efficient and orderly development of the area. So this application was publicly noticed. We didn't receive any responses to those notices. Staff is recommending approval of Resolution 2019-17 with the following conditions, and these came from technical review committee comments. Number 1, that the property shall remain a single-family residence rented as a single living unit. That would meet the definition. Number 2, the building shall be maintained with 1 smoke detector in each sleeping area, 1 smoke detector in the common hall between sleeping areas, smoke detectors having a 10-year lithium battery style, and fire extinguisher provided with annual inspections. Item 3, the applicant shall obtain and maintain a business tax receipt for the use. And what would keep this conditional use active is that the business tax receipt not be allowed to lapse for more than 6 months at a time. Are there any questions?
Any questions from the board?
What, I know we fairly recently changed the noticing requirements. Did this fall under the old or the new?
The new.
So 500 feet?
Yes.
I'm surprised we don't have any residents, honestly.
I have a question. How many beds is this property?
I don't know, and I did not speak with the applicant. It does not appear that he is here. I thought the applicant would be here.
So that's why I was just curious. I guess a follow-up to the point just raised. If it is changed to short-term rental, what happens if? And I have very limited experience with these type of, I guess, industries. But what happens if they're not successful in renting it out? Like
Well-
consistently successful.
That's completely, I guess, their issue. If they let the business tax receipt lapse, if they don't keep renewing it, if it lapses for 6 months time period, then they'd have to, then the conditional use would end. They'd have to come back to reestablish it.
Any more questions from the board? No? At this time, is the applicant present? No? That portion closed and is open to public discussion for pro or against. No one in the audience, so we'll close that portion as well. Move on to discussion between the board. Any questions or comments? I have a comment. We certainly need more short-term rental space here in Tarpon. We don't have enough hotels as it is, so just a comment. Any other questions or comments?
No, thank you for mentioning that. I have a comment. I think it's almost pleasant that a resident would take the time to apply in a proper manner to use their unit as short-term rental as opposed to what we discover sometime.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised.
I wish he was here to describe why,
Yeah.
what and how and such, but
Yeah,
that's my comment.
thank you. Any more comments or questions?
I do have a question. What is the amount of short term? I mean, is it a month? Is it 6 months? What determines short term?
Yes, and that definition is, 6 weeks or less. So that definition is
Very
on
vague.
page 2. Yeah.
There's some issues right now in Tarpon about what is a short-term rental. I think that's going to have a lot of discussion about that,
Well, they have seasonal stuff. Like seasonal, that could be like 3 months
Right.
or 4 months. You
Right.
know, like,
or 1 or 2 days.
or is it a day thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
That's kind of. I was
But-
wondering about the turnover in the property. Like,
But so under the ordinance, they can do daily rentals with this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions or comments? None. All right, may I have a motion to approve or deny application number 1940, conditional use approval, allow operation of a seasonal short-term rental on property located 18 West Orange Street in the T5D Transect District of the Special Area Plan.
I'll make a motion to approve application number 19-40.
Thank you.
Is it an application to approve with the conditions as written?
Yes. Thank you. Fine.
And I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Petrantoni,
Yes?
Ms. McCumber,
Yes.
Mr. Vesey,
Yes.
Mr. Staropoulos,
Yes.
Mr. Coiner,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Hasse.
Yes. Thank you. Application 1940 passes. Next, application number 19-53, Land Development Code Amendment, Ordinance 2019-14, an amendment to Section 25.12 to provide for an allowable height dimension specific to hotels.
And speaking of hotels, this is a proposed code change to the Highway Business District to allow a height specific to the hotel use to provide for the unique needs of the hotel industry. And we do have some zoning districts that have special height limits for hotels. I think maybe from an earlier time or kind of a time when we envisioned trying to encourage a hotel closer to the docks area, and that the Waterfront Commercial Fishing and Tourism Redevelopment District, the Waterfront Development District, those have higher limits for hotels. But what we're experiencing now, and we do have an applicant in-house at this point, we're seeing hotels proposed for what are becoming, a limited selection of vacant properties. And in order to accommodate the needed parking, they are having to go up. And so we have proposed a amendment to highway business, which is a predominant zoning along 19 and other areas of the city where there might be some properties available for these hotels, and to allow the height to go to 70 feet in those districts, or in that particular district on those properties.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the board? Any questions? None? Is the applicant present? Oh, okay.
The legislative proposal.
Is there any input from the public, pro or against? Seeing none, we'll close that section and leave it up to board comments now for staff or questions. Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve or deny application number 1953, please?
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Mr. Petrantoni,
I'll vote yes.
Ms. McCumber,
Yes.
Mr. Vesey,
Yes.
Mr. Stavropoulos,
Yes.
Mr. Coiner,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Hasse.
Yes. Thank you. Application number 1953 passes. Thank you. Moving on now to staff comments.
We will not be having a meeting in July. I can explain why if you.
Okay.
But yeah, we only have a couple of minor items that are going to be moving through, but our planning director will be on vacation and we won't be able to move those forward to the Board of Commissioners. And so it was decided to go ahead and cancel that meeting. So hopefully you won't have a huge agenda for August, but that's where we are.
Vacation. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any board comments? Seeing none, I motion to adjourn.
Chairman, I move we adjourn this meeting.
Thank you. Second. Heard. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're done. Thank you.
I started to print this.
Interesting. I've got
Yeah, it would be a